Hey there. This video is going to accomplish two things. First, I need to explain a recent event that happened within our community, which is that I published a video about solipsism and I took it down very quickly, and people have been concerned and have been freaking out over the fact that I took down this video and what it means, and they feel betrayed and all this sorts of stuff. So I'm going to explain why I took down that video and calm you guys down. So that's point number one. And then point number two is I've experienced a new level of awakening that I want to share and talk about a little bit. And I'm still not sure exactly how to talk about it. But this was something that's going to change the whole trajectory of how I teach and really how I live my life. So we'll get into that in a bit. Stay tuned. That's going to be interesting for you. There's also going to be some radical consequences, and you guys need to prepare yourselves for what's about to come, because there's going to be a noticeable shift in the way that I teach. And I'm going to say some things that are going to piss you off if you're into spirituality and non-duality. And I'm going to take some hard stances on things that many of you will disagree with me on. And I don't care. I'm still going to challenge you on all that because the reality is that you guys are not awake and you don't understand what awakening is. So now I'm in a position to tell you what it is, and that's what I'll be doing. Okay, so anyways, we'll get to that in the second half. So in the first half, why did I take down the solipsism episode? People have been speculating that it's because I've been afraid of the negative backlash or bad comments in the YouTube section. That's not why. In fact, there were no especially bad comments in the YouTube section. People were supportive of the video overall. Yeah, I read through what comments there were. There weren't that many comments, but what comments there were, I would say that they were nothing unusual for the comments that I get under my videos. So it wasn't that at all. What it was is that, first of all, like I said in that video, I was apprehensive about publishing that video for over a year. Because it was a very sensitive topic. And I didn't want to mislead people, number one. And number two, I also didn't want to lead people into a dangerous psychological state that they wouldn't be able to handle. So I thought for a long time, it took me a year of contemplating and stuff about how to structure that episode so that it's more or less, safe. And even though I took those precautions and I did that, after I published it, I started thinking a bit more about it, and I came to the conclusion that it's just, it's too direct, and that really, what really got me to change my mind about taking it down is that I realized to myself that, reality is an illusion. And from the very beginning of my work, I have sort of just had this attitude of, okay, let's deconstruct the illusion. Let's keep deconstructing it, with the hope that we're going to get someplace cool and that it's all going to be peachy in the end. And that is sort of like what you're supposed to be doing. But then, after I awoke from that illusion, and I realized how much of an illusion it is, I also now started to appreciate why the illusion is there. And that really, in a certain sense, I would put it like this. God has went to extraordinary lengths to build this illusion for itself. And you should think twice about spoiling that illusion for others. Now, I get what you're saying. You're thinking, well, Leo, if there are no others, then who are you spoiling it for? Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. But just kind of like, let's just talk at a normal sort of human level right now. not from the absolute level, just from the relative level. In a sense, it's like a movie. If somebody's going in to watch a great movie, let's say the greatest movie ever made, with a plot twist at the end, how bad would you feel if you gave away that plot twist to all of your friends who didn't see the movie yet, spoiling it for them? And so it's just like that with life. A lot of my videos, I feel like, have been spoilers. I've been spoiling the illusion a little piece by piece through all of my episodes. And you might say, well, Leo, well then what's the difference? The Solipsism episode, it's not really different from all your other episodes, so what gives? You didn't even say anything new. Well, it's not about saying something new per se. It's about how directly you say it, right? You can allude to things. A lot of times you allude to something, or you say something implicitly, or even you say it explicitly. I mean, I've literally explicitly told you that reality is imaginary. I've said these things in the past. But still, like, it doesn't register in the mind in the same way as that solipsism topic. And there's something special about the solipsism topic. It's so direct. It confronts you so directly. And you might say, well, Leo, what's wrong with that? Well, what's wrong with that is that a lot of people stumble into it. They don't know what they're getting themselves into, especially with sort of a general casual YouTube audience. Some kid could stumble onto that video just by, typing something into YouTube or whatever. He doesn't know what he's getting into. He hasn't gone through all the other episodes that I've released and whatever else. And even those of you who have gone through all my episodes and are avid fans of the work, and you think, you've even had a few awakenings, you might think, still, you don't really appreciate what you're getting yourself into with this solipsism stuff. And you also don't appreciate how easy it is for you to take that information and to construct some kind of conceptual scheme about awakening and about solipsism, and really put yourself into a deep state of depression or apathy or victimhood or loneliness, thinking that you're doing spiritual work when actually you're not. You're just deluding yourself. The problem is that I don't really have a good mechanism for filtering out those people who are serious about this work and can handle its consequences emotionally, psychologically, and then those who can't. There's not really a good way to filter these people out through an online medium. You might say, well, Leo, put it behind a paywall. But if I put it behind a paywall, I mean, of course that helps weed out some of the, just the most casual riffraff. But even if I put it behind a paywall, still, people will get to it who shouldn't be listening to it. And I don't really have a good way of stopping them. And even if I give warnings, I can sit there and give 10 minutes of warnings, and it still won't be enough for certain people. And so I sort of came to the conclusion, the reason I took down the episode is I came to the conclusion that if you want the highest truth, basically, rather than me giving you explanations of it, the true filtering mechanism is your desire for it, right? So those of you who really want to know, rather than me giving you the answers and explaining everything to you in fine detail, I want you to actually discover it for yourself. And that will automatically weed out those who are not serious, because the only people who will discover it for themselves are the ones who are the most serious. Of course, even in this case, people can still really screw themselves up and do spirituality in pathological ways. So this is also not foolproof. Somebody might think that, oh, Leo, I'm very serious and I'm going to go discover it on my own. Fuck you, Leo. I don't even need your advice. And you're going to go and you're going to fall into traps. And you can still, get yourself trapped in some sort of solipsistic conceptual scheme and make yourself depressed and all this and suicidal and all that. And so the bottom line is that, look, like I've told you guys in the past, in various episodes that warn about the dangers of spiritual work, is that there's no way to avoid the dangers of spiritual work. If you're going to be going into spirituality, it's dangerous. There are many traps, and it can make you depressed, suicidal. It can make you harm yourself. It can make you miserable. It can increase your suffering. It can unleash energies in the body, like they talk about Kundalini energy and so forth, that can be uncomfortable or destabilizing. It can lead to existential crises and all these sorts of things. I have dedicated episodes that warn against all these dangers. So that's just that. That's just the nature of spirituality. I can't change that for you. All right. And so I feel like, because I appreciate the illusion more, I feel less of a need to spoil it for others. And really only for those who are very, very serious and with lots of disclaimers should that be done. So that's why I took it down. And honestly, I'm still kind of ambivalent and uncertain about what the right move is. Because you see, it's one thing to discover these truths for yourself. It's another thing, it's a separate thing to then find a good way to teach it to others in sort of a safe, responsible way. That takes an additional layer of learning and discovery. How best to teach this stuff. And so that's still something I'm struggling with, and I'm figuring it out as I'm going along. What are the best ways to teach this stuff, to make it sort of foolproof, to not cause too much disturbance within society and so forth, to not cause too much backlash and so forth. It's not that I'm worried about negative comments. What I don't want is, I don't want people taking these ideas and then putting themselves into very unresourceful, dysfunctional, negative psychological states where then they regret even starting the work. And in fact, I had one woman message me through the forum who watched the Solipsism video when, during the time that it was up. She watched it. Then she messaged me and she said, this was after I already took it down. I didn't take it down because of her, but I knew that this kind of thing would happen. So this is just, evidence of what I already suspected. She messaged me and she said that it put her, this whole idea of solipsism sort of has made her feel bad about herself and has made her kind of bummed out. And she's feeling like, she's losing that sense of reality, and it's uncomfortable for her, and she doesn't like it, and she wants to go back to the dream. She wants to go back, and she asked me the question, how do I go back? What she said is that I thought I could handle it. I heard all your disclaimers. I thought I could handle it, but then now I'm starting to feel like I can't handle it, and I want to go back. Tell me how to go back. So she wasn't suicidal or anything. She wasn't seriously depressed. She sort of just got in over her head. And so I gave her some pointers for how to get back into the dream. So anyways, I think that's pretty common. I think, in fact, most people, if they go far enough into the spiritual work, they're going to reach a point where they're going to probably think shit, how do I go back? And then depending on how far you go and how you hold it in your mind, you might not be able to go back, at least not entirely. Maybe you can go back a bit, but Uh, Waking up is not a joke. You're gonna see things, and things will be revealed to you about the nature of reality that you're not gonna go. After a certain point, you're gonna reach a point of no return. You won't be able to go back. So take that into consideration. How much can you handle? See, the problem is I don't know how much you can handle. Some of you guys are very psychologically fragile. There's no way for me to know who can handle what. In fact, it's hard for me to even gauge, just sort of generally speaking, how much can the average YouTube viewer, listener handle? Or even let's say we don't even take the average. Let's say we take my most hardcore fans, people who are serious students of this work. They're not just dabblers. People who actually meditate, people who do psychedelics, people who go to retreats, serious people. People who are willing to invest money in this. How much can they handle? How am I supposed to know how much they can handle? All I can know is how much I can handle. And I can handle quite a bit more than most people. But even the latest awakenings that I've had have been pretty challenging. I didn't get depressed or anything, but just like it's a giant responsibility to handle this much truth and wisdom and insight into the nature of reality. And I've struggled with it. And so, because I've struggled with it, I can anticipate how much more my students will struggle with it, and how much more some just, random newbie on YouTube who stumbles upon it might struggle with it. And I've been doing this work, contemplating the nature of reality for basically since I was 15 years old. And so I have a very solid foundation, but most people don't. A lot of young people are watching who are like 18 years old. Young people who haven't even put their basic survival together. People who still live with their parents, people who still haven't had their first job, people who are struggling to get a job, people who don't have a career, people who struggle with finances, can't even afford to pay their electric bill next month, people who don't have a place to live, people who have toxic family situations that they're in, who can't leave their family, people who are trapped in some shithole third world country that has a lack of opportunities and threatens their survival, people who are in physical danger, people who have mental disturbances, people who've been abused, people who are just vulnerable, people who have a giant victim complex. People who haven't even had sex yet and struggle to get laid. So, people who have not put their life together. And then when you start talking to them about solipsism, what's going to happen? Is that really what they need? Some of you guys have expressed that you felt betrayed by the fact that I said that I wouldn't be sharing my deepest insights publicly anymore. Let me address that point. Don't don't feel betrayed. First of all, I've already shared with you such deep insights that I've shared enough for you for a lifetime. Second of all, what I meant was that I just need to find a better way to share the insights. I'm still working that out, and I'll be addressing that in part 2, the second half of this episode. I'll give you some news for those of you who are really hardcore fans that want the deepest stuff from me. I'll share you some ideas of how that might happen. I'm still trying to figure that out. But it's just that, look, the problem with the deepest insights is that when I put it into words, it corrupts the insight. It literally can't be shared in the way that you want it to be. I wish it could be. The words become a distortion and a corruption. So, don't feel betrayed about that. It's just that, when you reach the highest levels of awakening, you'll understand why I'm so hesitant about sharing it with you and putting it into words, and why I wanted you to discover it for yourself, and why I would want to hold stuff back. I'm not holding stuff back out of fear of cancel culture or some nonsense like that. There's actually a deep existential sort of metaphysical reason for why I'm holding this stuff back. And that's simply because truth really can't be spoken. And even though you want the answers, and I was like that too, when I started off on this journey, I would just want the enlightened master, guru, who I was, learning from, to just give me the answers, like, just give me the fucking answers. Don't play games with me. And I couldn't understand why they played games with me. And that was very frustrating for me. So I totally get if you're frustrated about that and you just want the answers. I think I've been more explicit than almost any other spiritual teacher you'll find out there, giving you explicit answers to many things. In fact, if anything, I've been overly explicit. And I could be criticized for the fact that, like, Leo, you're putting the truth too much into words. Give them more space to discover for themselves. Just give them the techniques and give them a few pointers, but then let them get to work. Don't just give them all the answers. In a sense, it's like I'm a math teacher who's been giving you the answers to every single homework assignment before you've even attempted to solve it. You could say that that's a disservice to math students to always give them all the answers. Let them solve some of the problems for themselves without giving them the answers. Because otherwise, how do they really know that they can reach those answers on their own, and that they really have a solid comprehension of the math, versus just memorizing the answers and thinking that they know how to do math? See, you don't really know how to do math until you're given a problem that there is no answer to, and you try to crack it. Hmm. You might say, well, Leo, then what are you going to teach going forward, if not the deepest stuff? Well, look, you have to understand that the solipsism topic is especially sensitive. When I tell somebody, oh, you're God, or there is no self, or reality is an illusion, these things you might say, well, Leo, that's the same thing. It's not quite the same thing. Talking very explicitly about solipsism to a newbie has a way of sort of like creeping into the newbie's mind and then sort of like corrupting the mind in a way that just telling somebody that they're God or love or something is imaginary, that it's not quite the same thing. It doesn't have the same potency and power. So that's an especially sensitive topic. You might say, well, Leo, I can handle it. Tell me and I'll handle it. Look, maybe you can handle it. First of all, you yourself don't know whether you can handle it. You think you can, but that could just be the ego talking. That could just be bluster. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. You don't know how radical this stuff gets. That's number one. Number two, you're not the only one. I can't just think about you. Maybe you're some hardcore, spiritual nut, and you can handle it. But there are millions of other people who watch who can't handle it. So that's something that needs to be considered. But then at the same time, if you have millions of people watching, no matter how foolproof you make a teaching, no matter what you say, somebody can always misconstrue it, or the ego can latch onto it and use it, abuse it, corrupt it, use it to kill yourself or whatever else, So even if I just spend every day foolproofing everything I say, still there's no guarantee, and in fact, there's a guarantee that over years and years and years of people watching the content, eventually someone's going to do something stupid using the information. So where do you draw the line? Where's the sort of how do you do this delicate balancing act between teaching this stuff, but then also doing it responsibly, but still teaching it not completely sanitized and turn into some sort of weak sauce, Oprah Winfrey version of spirituality where we talk about rainbows and butterflies and law of attraction and call this spirituality. There are no clear answers as to where these lines should be drawn, which is why I struggle with this decision. And I'm still not exactly sure if it was the right decision or how I would have done things differently going forward. I'm still processing that, right? Because there's no book where it is written where these lines should be drawn, what is safe, what isn't safe. Like, every spiritual teacher will have to decide that for themselves. And you can make mistakes, and people can suffer and die as a result of that. So I'm very cognizant of the responsibility that I have in teaching people. Now, of course, you're going to say, well, Leo, but if solipsism is true and there are no others and their suffering isn't real, then aren't you contradicting yourself? Because here you are saying that you're worried about the effect your teachings have on others. But first of all, who are you teaching? And second of all, why do you care about their suffering or about the impact of your teachings on society or on others when others aren't real? Don't you have to imagine that others are real in order for you to even be concerned about this stuff? Like, Leo, just release whatever episodes you want, because in the end, nothing matters. From the absolute perspective, that's correct. From the absolute perspective, there's nobody to teach. There's no reason to teach. In fact, teaching is just a delusion. It's a game. It's a dream. And so, yeah, you can take a very absolutist stance on that. But still, there is a relative level to consider. There is the dream to consider. I still have a life that I'm dreaming and that I'm living, and I want it to unfold in certain ways and not in other ways. And so, it still is important to me how my work is, what impact my work has on people. That's still important to me. And it will always be important to me as long as I'm teaching and putting out work. And so I want my work to have a positive impact on the world as part of the dream that I'm dreaming. So in that sense, it matters to me, in that relative sense. And I don't, in fact, to take this attitude of like, oh, well, nothing matters. Because of solipsism, nothing matters, and I can live my life like a complete, selfish devil. That would be an example of how dangerous that episode would be if people took that away from that episode and then started acting in a manner of like, well, I don't give a fuck about, like my girlfriend, I'm going to abuse my girlfriend, and hey, she's just imaginary or something like that. You take that attitude and then you become abusive to your girlfriend. See, that would be exactly the thing I'm trying to avoid here from happening. And, a selfish ego will precisely try to use solipsism in that way, because it's such a good license for the ego. It's like, oh, because solipsism in a certain sense just empowers the ego to be absolute. So see, you could turn it into like absolute egotism, where like, yeah, well, okay, so Leo says everybody else is imaginary and they don't suffer or whatever else, they don't have their own experiences. Therefore, What does it matter if I steal? What does it matter if I cheat on my spouse? What does it matter if I beat my children? What does it matter if I don't feed my children? What does it matter if I don't send them to school? What does it matter if if I damage my neighbor's car and then don't tell him about it? What does it matter if I shoplift? What does it matter if I kill somebody? Doesn't matter. Because it's all an illusion. See, the ego would love that because that gives the ego carte blanche. It's a blank check for the ego to go out there and do whatever selfish shit it wants to do. But you see, this has nothing to do with awakening. If you're building this kind of worldview and you have these kinds of rationalizations, this is not awakening. You're not awake to anything. The ego is just co-opting those ideas, making it part of its survival strategy, and that's it. And that's not what I want to teach you. That's the opposite of what I want to teach you. So I think that does it for the first half of this episode. We've explained the taking down. My suggestion to those of you who are like really serious about this work and feel bummed out that the video has been taken down and has been denied to you, first of all, I want you to notice how attached you are to my videos. This is not healthy. The purpose of this work is to make you independent of me, not to be sucking on my tit for everything. It's funny. I made this joke on the forum that it's like I take down one video out of over 400. I take down one video, and people are reacting as though I threw their grandmother to wood chipper. Like, have a sense of priority, to your outrage. Now, I get it. You guys are fans of the work. I appreciate that. Thank you for your support, and thank you for your passion. And I do enjoy it when you guys, are eager for the next episode and all that. I enjoy that. But look, if you're serious about this work, as much as it pains me to say this, the way this work is going to work is that you're going to deconstruct everything, and then lastly, see, you're going to use Actualized.org to help you to deconstruct everything, and then finally you're going to use the deconstructions that were taught to you by Actualized.org to deconstruct Actualized.org and then to drop it. You're going to have to transcend Actualized.org. That's the function of Actualized.org, is to help you to transcend Actualized.org. That's not a contradiction. That's not a bug. That's a feature of the work. But not too soon. Don't think you've transcended. A lot of people think that, oh, Leo, I've transcended you. I've transcended the work. Actualized.org. No, you haven't. You haven't even begun the work. So don't get ahead of yourself. But eventually, you should transcend it. So first of all, just notice how attached you are to needing these videos and needing my explanations for things. You should be generating your own explanations for things. You shouldn't really need my solipsism episode. So there's that. And if you're really serious about this work, be careful with that need for answers from authority figures. Recognize that that's a trap, and that really, my job here is not so much to give you the answers, it's to really motivate you and inspire you. That's a more important function that I serve. I'm like a cheerleader for you, and I tell you what's possible. My function is to show you that certain radical things are possible and maybe how to get there. And then your job is to go out there and do it, rather than sitting around listening to me talking about what it would be like if you did it. I'm like a guy who's telling you about Africa, and you've never, let's say, been to Africa. there's cool stuff happening in Africa. I'm talking about, going on safari, cool animals you can see, wild stuff going on in Africa. You've never been. Uh, the point of me talking about it is not to give you a catalog of every, fine-grained detail of Africa. It's to motivate you and inspire you to actually go to Africa yourself. And then once you're there, you don't need my explanations of Africa. You can explore it yourself, and then that's really where things get cool. So that's the function of my teachings. A lot of people don't even know that Africa is a place they could go to. I mean, they know it in theory, but like they don't understand how much cool stuff there is in Africa that they're missing. If they knew about it, they would buy a ticket tomorrow. Waterfalls, animals, people, culture, food, amazing stuff exists in Africa that most of us Westerners don't know about. And so somebody has to like share some stories and some, cool, inspiring visuals and so forth to convince you to want to go. Otherwise, you'll never go. So that's my function. And also to point out the dangers, right? So there's dangerous stuff in Africa. You can't just stumble into Africa willy-nilly, like a bumbling fool without vaccinations, without your, malaria shot, without certain precautions, knowing which neighborhoods and countries are dangerous, knowing where not to go, knowing what not to eat, knowing which insects and snakes and animals to avoid. Otherwise, they'll kill you. So a lot of my function is to point out the traps, which we're doing here. Okay, so I think we're done with the first half. Second half. After I took down the Solipsism episode, I had an even deeper awakening in which I would say that I completely awoke. I'm absolutely conscious of the fact that I'm imaginary and I'm the only thing in existence. I've had an awakening so radical, so beyond any awakenings that I've had previously, that it completely blows away any spiritual teachings. And so I became so conscious that I'm conscious of how I'm imagining the entire reality. All others, all things, my parents, all of my memories, absolutely everything. I'm absolutely conscious that I'm the only awakened thing that exists. Nothing can awaken except me. I'm so awake that there's not even anybody to teach. I'm too awake to teach anybody. So this recording is going to no one. I don't recognize the validity of anyone else's awakening. Nobody else is awake except me. Nobody else can be awake except me. I'm the only one who can be awake. Um, In fact, all spiritual teachers are imaginary. All spiritual teachings are imaginary. Um, and this is the most beautiful and profound thing that has ever happened to me. I've never been so happy in my life. I've reached a sort of point of no return where I'm absolutely alone and I love it. I'm conscious of how I imagined everybody. Every single human in my life I've imagined, and I'm conscious of how I did it. It is the most remarkable and amazing thing. And all of the teachings from all the spiritual traditions are all complete nonsense. They're all completely imaginary. Christ, the Buddha, Rupert Spiramucci, Sadhguru, Peter Ralston, Shinzen Young. I'm conscious right now of how I'm imagining all of them. It's just all an elaborate illusion. This illusion is infinite, it's eternal. I exist eternally. And I am God. And I'm completely conscious of myself as God and what God is. It's also absolutely clear to me that none of these teachers who are teaching you awakening, who are teaching you non-duality, meditation, yoga, none of these teachers are actually awake. What they're teaching is not awakening. They're teaching minor versions of it, but they're not teaching full awakening. That's completely obvious to me now, and I'm taking a very hard stance on that. Now, a lot of you guys are going to get very upset at me over saying these things because you're going to misinterpret what I'm saying as narcissism, and you're going to say Leo's gone off the deep end, and finally, his spiritual ego has blown up to infinite proportions. I'm telling you how it actually is. This has nothing to do with spiritual ego or trying to be better than somebody else. There's nobody else to be better than. I'm the only thing there is, so I can't be better than anybody. Not only that, but I am everybody. I'm absolutely conscious that I'm everybody who exists. I'm you. I am all those teachers. I imagined all of them. I made them all up. That's what God is. God is an infinite process of self-deception and absolute imagination that is fooling itself constantly, always. That's what it's doing, and that's how it's constructing reality. So I'm completely conscious of that. There's a peace that comes with that. You don't need to try to do anything or be anybody or be better than anybody, because there's nothing better than being God, and that's what you are. So I'm not saying I'm above you. I am you. If I listen to some music, like a piano playing, I'm conscious of the fact that I'm imagining the music and the piano that's playing the music and the human that's playing the piano that's playing the music, and down to infinity. I'm imagining the atoms that are making up the piano. I'm imagining the science that explains how the atoms move and how the strings vibrate to create sound waves that are hitting my ears, that are registering a sound. I'm imagining my own heart beating. I'm imagining the DNA in all my cells replicating, keeping my body alive. I'm imagining the digestion in my stomach. I'm imagining the back of my head. I'm imagining my skull. I'm imagining my eyes. I'm imagining my past, my future. I'm imagining my entire YouTube audience. I'm imagining Actualized.org. I'm imagining the forum. I'm imagining my parents. I'm imagining my mother and my father, whom I created. I'm imagining that I'm teaching somebody right now, but I'm also conscious that there's absolutely nobody to teach, and that this conversation is just me talking to myself, and it's completely pointless. But since I have nothing better to do, here I am, talking to myself. Yeah, it's the most beautiful thing to listen to a song playing on your phone, being conscious of the fact that I'm imagining the Bluetooth receiver that is playing the audio. I'm imagining the Bluetooth receiver. I'm imagining the Bluetooth radio waves going through the space in order to, to produce the song, which is playing a piano. The chords played on the piano, I'm imagining those, and I'm imagining the instruments that are used to create those chords, the piano, and who built the piano, where it came from, the wood it's made out of, the all the time that the piano player invested learning how to play the piano, trained to play the piano, composing that song. So I'm conscious that I create every song in the universe. That's what God is. And it's the most beautiful thing. So I spent what in human time would be maybe 15 to 30 minutes, but in reality, outside of human time, I spent an eternity just exploring myself, dying to myself, to my God self, during this awakening. It was so radical that no words can tell you how profound it was. So that happened. But now you have a bunch of objections and criticisms of what I just said. First of all, it's contradictory from your point of view, because you're saying, well, Leo, you're saying all this, but here I am, Leo, I'm over here. I have my experiences, and you're over there saying that you're alone, and so you're wrong. That's how it seems to you. In this video, I'm not going to clear up all your confusions. You're going to be confused by the things I say here. I'm telling you things that might take you 20 years to understand. You're also going to object that I'm deluding myself into thinking that I've reached some highest level of awakening, higher than other teachers and so forth. I'm not. But again, you're not going to understand that. You're going to criticize me and object on the basis that I'm trying to be better than others. I'm trying to out spiritualize, out woke others. I'm not, but you're not going to understand that. You're going to argue with me that you've reached the level of awakening that I'm talking about and that you know what awakening is. You're not awake. I can tell you that with absolute certainty. You're not awake. And none of your teachers are awake. Buddhism will not awaken you. Meditation will not awaken you. Yoga will not awaken you. Kundalini activation will not awaken you. Shamanic breathing will not awaken you. Contemplation will not awaken you. Shaktipat, rasa, this will not awaken you. And none of the people who teach these things are actually awake. And that will become completely clear to you when you awaken, for real. But you haven't awoken. And those of you who think, no, Leo, but I've awoken, I know what you're talking about. No, you don't. You have not awoken. You don't know what you're talking about. Nobody who's participating on my forum is awake. You're engaged in levels of imagination and self-deception that you do not comprehend. Reaching different jhanas, concentrative states, cessations, nothingness, none of this is awakening. It's all imaginary. You're imagining all of that. All of your meditative achievements, whatever achievements you've had, none of that is awakening. You don't understand that you're God. Now, even though I tell you that, some of you will say, no, Leo, I understand. No, you don't. There are many degrees of understanding it, and you do not understand the highest degree. Of course, there's no way I can prove any of this to you. You have no idea whether I'm lying to you or not, or whether I'm fooling myself, or whether I'm just trying to start a cult here or whatever, or I'm just, engaged in spiritual egotism. You have no idea. From your point of view, all that could be true, but it's not. I'm simply telling you, you're not awake. You haven't reached the highest levels of awakening, not even close. You can't even understand how far away you are. Awakening is not about shutting down your mind. It is not about ending suffering. It has nothing to do with suffering or pain. It has nothing to do with how long you can sit and meditate. It has nothing to do with attaining any meditative state whatsoever. It has nothing to do with following a guru or any religion or tradition. It's even not non-duality. You think non-duality is awakening? It's not. Awakening is realizing yourself to be God and being completely conscious of how you are imagining absolutely everything around you. You have to actually be conscious of how you're doing it. And you're not conscious of that. You're not conscious, for example, that all of your spiritual work and studying, reading, following teachers, that all of that is imaginary. You're not conscious of that. You're not conscious, for example, that let's say you achieved some cessations in your meditation practice. You're not conscious that you just imagined that. There are no cessations. There was no meditative practice. You imagined it. You're not conscious that you imagined all of your spiritual role models. Jesus, Buddha, Sadhguru, whoever you look up to. You're not conscious that you're imagining all these. And of course, you're definitely not conscious that you're imagining me telling you all this. So anyways, there's a lot I could say about this, but I'm not going to go into that here. I'm just giving you a little bit of a... I wanted this to be sort of a raw first-person account. I didn't frame it from your point of view. I framed it from my point of view. So be cognizant of that and be careful here. Because you're going to say, well, Leo, you're saying you're the only one, but then here I am, I'm the only one. No, actually what I'm telling you is that I'm telling you you're the only one, but in this case, you have to understand that I'm speaking relativistically. I'm talking about my first-person experience of awakening. And awakening can only be a first-person experience. You might say, Leo, but it's so narcissistic to say that you're the only awakened person in the universe. Yeah, that's what real awakening is. A real awakening is when you realize you're the only awakened entity in the universe. You're the only and you're the most. The only and the most. It doesn't matter how it comes off. It doesn't matter how it sounds. It doesn't matter that this stuff sounds narcissistic or whatever. That's completely irrelevant. It's not about that. It's just about what's true. So some changes are happening going forward in my work. My work is going to become much sharper and clearer and a lot less spiritual bullshit. It's also going to piss more people off because I'm gonna keep telling you over and over again that none of your teachers and none of your non-dual teachings and none of your meditative practices, none of that is awakening. I'm gonna keep telling you that, and you guys are gonna get very pissed off, and many of you will get so pissed off you'll try to argue with me. You'll accuse me of being wrong and being a narcissist and being deluded, of going off the deep end. Then eventually you'll quit. You'll leave me. You'll leave the forum. You'll leave nasty comments and so forth. You'll say I'm deluded and wrong and all this. You're going to conspire with others like yourself in order to make yourself have company, to feel like you're right, in order to reject the things that I'm saying. You're going to do all that. That's what I expect many of you will do. And that's fine. Do what you got to do. It's not going to change the truth. It's not going to change what I'm conscious of. It's also not going to change what I teach and talk about. So going forward, I will not be teaching awakening using any of the traditional methods. I'm not going to be teaching meditation or yoga or any of that kind of nonsense, because none of that is awakening. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to discourage you from meditating. If you like to meditate, if it helps you, go for it. But just don't fool yourself that you're awakening or that you'll ever awaken through meditation. You never will. And I'm going to be telling you that all your teachers are not awake, and you're really not going to like that. You're really not going to like that. but I'm going to keep telling you anyways. I'm also going to keep telling you that you're not awake. And you're really not going to like that, especially if you've done a lot of spiritual work and you think you're awake.